Hey guys, Anas here from GHL Experts. A bunch of you guys requested for me to put together a video for how to create an account and then how to create a user under that account with detailed permissions. Ever since HighLevel has released their new API, so I'm going to go through this. I haven't really gone through it yet, so I'm going to be going through it with you. So bear with me if there's a bit of delays, and I hope this helps a lot of you guys out there. So let's just get started. So I'll move myself over here. Okay, so for starters, obviously, once you log into your account, there's the first thing that we're going to do. Actually, I'll kind of just go step by step guide. So the first thing that we're going to do, and most of you guys probably already know how to do this, is just a simple form for user registration. So anywhere that's going to be on a funnel page, a website page, where people are going to sign up for your HighLevel account or a HighLevel as a SaaS offering. So you'll need that. We'll just quickly go through that. The next thing is obviously setting up the trigger. So once that form is submitted, then you want the user information to be passed on. And in this case, we're going to be using Zapier. So that's going to be passed to Zapier. In Zapier, we're going to create what is called a catch webhook. This is going to receive the data from HighLevel, what that user has submitted. So I'm not going to go through the whole process of like adding in the payment part of it and validating all of that. I'm assuming some of you guys already know how to do that. If you don't, then you could reach out to people within the community. You could reach out to myself as well. And we could help you with that part of it. It's just the basics of setting up the more complicated part, which is like really the API side of it. So once you create that catch hook, it's going to receive that data. The next thing is, I didn't mention it over here, but we need to figure out what snapshot we're going to be offering for that specific, I guess, that form submission. So sometimes people have multiple different snapshots, and you might want to deploy different snapshots for different users. So I'll show you how to get all the various snapshot IDs that you have within your account. The next thing will be to create that location, and then once we create that location, we'll create a user under that location, and then the last step will be passing on that information to that user, so emailing them their username and password and everything. So we'll quickly go through that, and let's get started. So I'm in my HighLevel account. The first thing I'm going to need to do, and there's something HighLevel recently released, is the concept of API keys. So it's something that you guys need to be aware of. This I'm going to delete it after, and this is definitely something you guys need to be careful with. I'm just going to go a little side pointer, a sidebar over here with API keys. Be very careful who you share them with, especially if you're working with external parties, developers, what it might be. And this kind of allows something, I guess, an added level of security because they didn't have this before, but being able to create multiple API keys for your account. So if in the case, let's say you share an API key with a developer, whatever, you don't trust them anymore, you could go and easily delete it, because anybody that has access to your API key can essentially do anything with your account. So just really keep that in mind. Because it's raw. They could delete accounts, they could access any of your accounts, or delete users, delete whatever they want, create whatever they want, do whatever you want with your account. So this API key that you guys create, make sure to keep them very safe. Don't just send them anywhere, post them anywhere, because it could be of detriment to you. So just as a side note. So what you would normally do is create a new key, go in here, name it, and then it's just going to generate a key like this. And again, keep in mind, I'm going to delete this one, so you guys won't be able to use this, or nobody will be able to use this after. So you're going to copy that. Actually, now that you've created your API key, another thing that you need to make sure is that you have a form created. So I'll just go into one of my accounts that I was testing this with. So what you want to do is go into your forms, make sure that you have a form. So I created one called account creation form. And this is just the basic information that HighLevel requires. So again, first name, last name, phone, email, organization, city, state, country, and website is not required, but I just put it in there. So at least all of these, I haven't put them as required fields. So you can go and click in each one and make sure that they're required when you're building out your form. I'm not going to go through that part, but it's just the basic information that you generally need for account creation. So once you have that form, I have it opened up over here. So I'll go in a second, and then you just want to create a trigger for that form. So account creation. So again, it's very simple. You create the trigger is a form submitted, form is account creation form, and then you're going to execute webhook, and I'm going to replace this URL in a second once we go into Zapier. So we're going to have to replace that URL, so that way you're passing the data to Zapier, and then Zapier is taking care of the rest of creating that account, creating the user, and doing all the rest. So now we'll kind of go into Zapier, and I'm going to start from scratch. So the first thing to do, obviously, if you're in your window, you're going to go to create that new Zap, and then let's just call it HL account creation. First thing that you want to do is look up webhooks by Zapier, and then over here what you want to do is called a catch hook. So catch hook, continue, and then this is going to give you a URL. So we're going to copy that URL, and then we're going to paste it right here, and then just save that. So now this trigger is obviously connected to this form, which we're going to use in about a second. Actually, you know what? We could go fill it out right now. So it's right there. This is all done. And then we'll just hit continue. So now it's going to be searching for data. So let's go pass it some data. So let's go back to the form that we created, and I'm just going to put in all my information. So that's good. Let's put in, you know, test company state, and then country. I'm a Canadian, so I'm going to put Canada. And let's put a URL, google.com. Let's just do testcompany.com, and then let's hit the submit. So this is hoping that's going to work. I actually have not tested it yet, so let's just see. Test trigger, and yes, it all came in. So this is all the information that came in, and this is what's going to be important in our following steps. So this is the first step you want to do, and you have to set this up. The next step is kind of optional. There's a couple of different ways you could do this. I'm just going to use the API method, but this next step is to try and get the snapshot ID. So whenever you're loading a new account, you need to pass it a snapshot, and there's different types of snapshots that HighLevel offers. And I'll just go into the actual API documentation. So if you go to developers.gohighlevel.com, once you go to this URL, these are all the various APIs that you have. Some of you guys might not be familiar, you know, how APIs work and stuff like that. So I'll try to walk you through for the most part, but I'll keep it very high level. I know that's the problem with the name of HighLevel. Whenever I say something like high level, no pun intended. So the API snapshot over here, the API for snapshots is a simple one. What it's going to do is just going to get all the snapshots that you have available in your account. So this is one way to do it. The other way is if you use this Zapier account creation, like the built-in action that they have or trigger that they have when you're creating the account, there's a drop down. So I could quickly show that to you guys. Hopefully I could open this in a new tab. So I'm going to go into this one. And when you're doing a add account, so this is like the high level action, the one natively built into Zapier. When you are choosing, no, not choosing your account, but customize your account, over here in the drop down, you click select snapshot, and you can get your snapshot ID from here. So each one of these has its snapshot ID, so you just kind of have to copy that. So you know, there's two ways to do it, but this is usually how you're going to do it. Either grab it from here, or the step that I'm going to show you right now, going back over here, is what we will do is use the API. So the next thing will be, again, same thing, webhooks by Zapier. But in this case, we're going to just use this as a step where we're actually going to delete it later. So this is just to get the data that we need, and then we're going to delete it after. So it's just a get request. So webhooks by Zapier action event is get, and we just do continue. And then over here, we're going to copy this URL, and we're going to drop it in right here. We don't have any query string parameters. Send as JSON, no. JSON key, no. Unflatten, we'll just say we don't need, actually it doesn't really matter. And then this is, we won't use basic auth, but we'll call it headers. So this is going to be for every single step we do next, this is going to be an important step. And in the first field, because there's two fields here in the headers field, the first one is going to be authorization. And then the second field, you have to put in that API key that we pulled in. So going back to at my account level, settings, API keys. This is the API key that I need that we had copied before. And then going back over here, you want to type in the word bearer like this, and then paste in your key. So this is how it always has to be done. Authorization in this field, bearer, space, and then the API key that you copied. Make sure there's no spaces at the end or anything. And then that's it. So let's just do continue. And let's test and review. And you'll see all the snapshots that you have in your account, right? So the ones that are type vertical, these are the ones that are built into HighLevel. So if you're ever like creating an account, you'll see like the ones that they have. I think there's ones that are imported, and then the ones that you have created yourself. So you're just gonna go and grab whichever ID that you want. So technically you could keep this as a step, and we can go to the next step because we're gonna be able to iterate over these and take a specific one, I believe. So let's just see. Setup. All right. So we've gotten that get request. We got our snapshots. If you want to you always know you're going to be using the same snapshot. You could just grab one of these IDs, copy it, save it somewhere, and then just delete the step because we won't need it anymore. and then you're going to add the next step. So the next step is actually going and creating the account. So let's go and create that account, and then same thing, we're going to use webhooks by Zapier. In this case, we're actually not going to do a post or a get. We're going to just do a custom request. It'll just make this a little bit easier. So we'll do a custom request, continue. And then the first thing is the method. So we're using a post method. So a post method, just as a little education, is usually a way to create a specific type of object. In this case, the object that we're creating is a location under your agency account. So a post usually is synonymous with the idea of creation. And then the URL that we need. So we're going back to the API, and in this case, we want the location API. So there's the get one, and then there's the post one. The API is the same. The get is the method type. So again, not to get into too many details of what that means, but these are called HTTP requests. This is a get request and this is a post request. So we're going to copy this one right here and paste it over here. So now we have that. Make sure, again, no spaces anywhere, no extra spaces. The pass through, this is fine. I think we would choose true. Actually, no, let's choose false. We don't want the data to pass through. And then, yeah, okay, so now the next thing is to type the data that we need over here. So let's go back into HighLevel, and what you want to do is at the post, you want to see over here, so example request. You want to do view more and copy everything that you see in these curly braces. Make sure not to copy that extra apostrophe, and then just copy that, and we're going to go back here and we're just going to drop it in over here. Okay. So now this is all the data that we could pass through. So the first thing is first name. So I'm just going to go through this quickly with you guys. Okay, I think I have to put it like this. So make sure to keep the quotation marks. I'm going to test it, but I'm assuming you have to do it this way. And now we can go back to the data that we already have. So let's just search first name, and I have my first name. Let's pop it in there. Last name, email. So I know this is going to take a little bit long. I'm just going to pause it. I'll just fill everything, at least these basic ones, and I'll come back to you guys in a second. All right, guys. So I filled out the information. Two things that I forgot about. One is that for some reason, this is a high-level issue. When you put in the organization over here, it doesn't actually pass through when they send it through a trigger. It's really weird. So you'd have to create a custom field for that. Just create a custom field called company name or whatever it is, and use that instead, because that's going to get passed through when it sends to Zapier. And the other thing I forgot here is the postal code. So in that case, I just wrote it in manually, but normally you want to use a dynamic field here so that it's not just always showing up as the same business name, and same thing with the postal code. But I just did it. I just hard coded in this case. The other settings over here is the settings thing. So you just keep it as is. Allow duplicate contacts. Usually most of the stuff you keep it as false. Is something I would say just recommend to change it later, and don't change it here. But you have the ability to do so if you want, if you're allowing duplicate contacts or opportunities. Or allowing Facebook name merge. So this is for when Messenger contacts come in. If you hook up Messenger, HighLevel will try to match the Facebook Messenger user that came in with maybe a lead that came in, because a lot of times you might do lead gen through Facebook Messenger. So it ends up creating a duplicate contact, but that's for another day. And then the time zone thing. So if you want to mark any of these as true, you can. The other thing is you could pass in custom Twilio information. So in this case, there's two. So actually I haven't tested this, but I'm assuming that you could technically receive the Twilio information from your user. So if they have their own Twilio account, you could ask for the SID and auth token, and then once you pass it in, it'll connect it to their Twilio account, as opposed to creating an automatic Twilio account under yours. If you don't pass this in, then it's automatically going to create a Twilio account under your, like a sub Twilio account under yours. This is an assumption because I haven't tested it yet. But let's just assume, I'm going to assume that I'm going to remove it because I don't have any Twilio, other Twilio authentication. And then this is where obviously it's important, is the snapshot, what we talked about in the previous step, and that ID. We'll get that in a second. And the last thing is social. So they allow you to pass in all the social information. So if you collect this in your onboarding form, you could grab this and also pass it into this. So I'm not going to pass this in. Actually, I'll just keep it as is. These are just going to fill out like that into my location. But technically you could also just remove this and not have it there. So if I do remove it, I'm just gonna cut it. You have to make sure that you never end off with a comma at the end. So remove that comma at the end if you do that. I'm just gonna add it back in just to see what happens. And then let's go back and get that snapshot ID. So I'm just gonna hit continue right now so that it doesn't lose what I was doing. And then let's go back to that get request that we did. And then let's grab an ID. So I'm not going to take a vertical one because these are the standard ones that come with HighLevel. And there's ways to make this dynamic, right? So you could make your form a little bit more dynamic where people could have a drop down. They could choose the snapshot that they might want to sign up with, and then that auto loads. So that's a little bit more advanced. So we won't go into that, but that is, that is a possibility if you want to do that. Allow them to choose the snapshot while they're onboarding. So let's just take one that I created. Here in my restaurant snapshot. So we'll go there, grab that ID, and then let's go back into this that I was creating, customize my request, and then let's pass in that ID. And then the type is own because that's the one that I created, and we'll call it own. And then let's keep everything else as is. So we're good over there. Unflatten, we will say no, we don't want it to unflatten. And then we're not using basic auth, we're using the similar type of authentication as we did before. So this is an authorization header. So again, the same thing, authorization, bearer, and then I'm just gonna quickly go grab my API key again. And then put it in there. So space, and then put that in. And then continue. So we're good to go. This is how it should pass everything. So this looks good to me. And then if I do a test, it should technically end up creating an account in my HighLevel account or sub account. So let's do a test and review and see what happens. The first name field is mandatory. And I do have it here. Let me give it a test, guys, and give me back. I'll be back in a sec. Hey, you guys, so just took me a few minutes, but it looks like I found the issue. I just had actually removed a quotation over here and a comma. So again, don't be like me. Make sure just to check everything. Make sure you have your double quotes around everything. The commas at the end. The last field, you don't necessarily need, well, the last field in the whole thing. So this one doesn't need a comma. This doesn't need a comma because you might get an error. But besides that, make sure after each one of these you have commas, you have your proper quotation marks and stuff like that. And if you ever change these, you just put the word true. You don't need to put commas for those because that's called a boolean, but we'll just keep it at false for now. So let's try that again. Continue. So this request does take a little bit of time, so let me just hit the test and review. Let's see. Okay, I got that again. Give me a second, guys. Sorry about that. Yeah, so one thing I forgot to put in also. Okay, so make sure all the data is parsed here correctly. So going back into the request of creating that, and then you have your authorization bearer, and then your API key, and then one other header you need to put in. So you need to add another one. It's content type, so capital C, capital T with a hyphen in the middle, and then it's application / forward / JSON. So you need to make sure that's there. Once you do that, again, you're going to hit done editing, continue, and then you're just going to do that the test and review. So you'll see in that that request was done. So you'll see that this account should have been created. So we're going to go just search in my account. Let's just do a refresh of this page, and that test account should exist. So you see test company is right over there. All right, so we got that test company going. And then what it returns back is the ID of that test company, location ID, and that's what's important for the next step when we're going to be creating the user. So once that's done, let's create a new step now. And this should be the last, well, actually this is the second to last step, and again is going to be another webhook. So we're going to follow pretty much the same process over there. Same thing, we're going to do custom request, continue. Method is going to be post again, the URL. So we're going to go back to the URL, and this is, we're going to use a new API, is the user endpoint. So we want to post to user, which again is creating user. So let's copy that first. And then we just do false. We don't want the data to pass through. Unflatten, no. We'll go put in the data at the end. Again, same thing. Authorization, and then bearer, and I'm just gonna go grab my API key again. Put that in there. Oh, that's not it. And second is the content type. So just make sure that's in there as well. and it's just application/JSON. Now let's go back and put the data that you need to actually pass in. So we're going to go here again. If you go to the post request, make sure you click on user post, and then you're going to have the example request, view more, and then the same thing under data raw. You want to copy everything that's here, copy that, and then make sure you're not getting those apostrophes. Go back here and let's paste that in. So now what you want to do is create that username. So obviously we're just going to use what we took from our first form submission, and let's just put it in first name and then last name. We'll grab their email, and then password. So there's a couple of different ways you could do this. You could just put in a generic password at the start. Let's go with something secure. So we'll just go like test. Well, it's not super secure, but I think for high level you need 8 characters, a special character, and numbers, and 1 capital, I believe. I think that's their criteria. You can create a secondary step in here to randomly generate a password for you. I'm not going to go do that right now, so you can just use a generic password. And then what's important over here is what type of user there are. So the general is going to be, they're going to be an account user, because you don't want to give them agency. So there's either agency or account, and the other one is their role. So either they're user admin. In this case, anybody that's signing up, they're going to be an admin for that location. In this case, we need to give them the location ID. So this is where we're grabbing the location ID from the previous step, that once we had a successful action of creating the account, it gave us back that ID. So that's what we're going to paste in over here. So I think if I type in ID, I should get it. So this is, no, that's not the location ID. That's where they submitted it from. This is the ID that was created, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, it's from step 3. So step 3, this is the return values that I got from step 3, which is the creating the account. And so that's the ID that I want to pass in there. So that's the location ID that they're going to access to, and then these are the various permissions that you might want to offer up, right? So depending on, like some of you guys might have different tiered plans where you're giving different access to different stuff. So that's where maybe in Zapier you might create paths at this point, where depending on what they paid, you're going to have different requests for different permission setups. So again, I'm not going to get into those details. If you want to reach out for help to kind of build those out, let me know. There's other people in the community as well. But the basic would be that you would create paths and just copy the same request, but then have different permissions that you enable. So in this case, let's just follow what they have over here. So campaigns enabled, true. We'll say that we don't want them to have access to websites. Let's actually say they don't have, just to show you guys, so they don't have access to funnels. And I think let's just give them everything else. Let's give them access to memberships. But hey, we don't want them to have access to settings enabled. So they can't see the settings, for example. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to change, let me just check in my team management if I have my personal email, and I don't think I do, so I should be okay. So I just want to log in after you guys and show you guys that this user will be able to log in after. And then keep in mind, this is the password that I used. So everything else looks good. Let's continue and let's test that. Let's hope that we're going to get it good on this time. Let's do a test and review. A user with this email already exists. I'm going just going to type it in manually, but normally you wouldn't have to do this. So I'm just going to put onstest@gmail.com. Since HighLevel doesn't really validate emails, you could let you put anything random here as long as it's a valid email structure. And let's try that again. All right, perfect. So now that user got created. And then the last step, if you want to add that in, is maybe sending out an email to the user. So you can kind of do something, HighLevel, Zapier has that built in. Where you could do it, you could technically connect back to your HighLevel account and just set up a trigger so that you could add updated contact essentially. So the moment someone submits a form, you could, in that same account, you could add a tag to them, which sends them their user information and password directly from HighLevel, or you could do it within Zapier. So that's really going to come down to how you want to do it. But going back over here, you put in all your information, put your body. I'm not going to go through the step, but you guys could do that and send off an email to that person. with all their information. You could put in whatever you want in the body of the email and stuff like that. So that I'll leave it up to you guys because that's not the difficult part. So now that we're done, let's just go and check if this user actually got created. So this is the data that we sent. So let's try to go log in. I'm gonna actually have to log out. So let's sign out, put that there, and then we'll put in that password that we created. And lo and behold, I have access to my test company and in funnels. So this is something that HighLevel probably has to fix. It shouldn't be called funnels if I don't have access to funnels, but I don't have access to funnels in websites. As you saw, that we marked that as false. Let's see what else that we had marked as false. Funnels, assign data, AdWords reporting. So if I go into reporting, I don't see AdWords or Facebook. I just see call reporting, right? So as you guys can see, it's working. So that's the setup of this all. What I will be doing also is that just to make people's lives easier, I'll share this Zap so that the setup will be a little bit easier for you guys. And technically, as I said, you could remove this step so that you don't need it in the subsequent steps. This is just to grab the snapshot ID. So this is the step that we use to just grab that snapshot ID. There's a way to format this data. So if you want to do it a bit more dynamically and pass in the IDs that you get from the snapshot, this request, we could do that. But again, I'm not going to be covering that in this video as we've already gone pretty long. So I hope that helps everybody. Again, if you have any questions, hit us up in our GHL experts group in the Facebook group. I'll do my best to help you guys. I get a lot of requests coming in, so I'll do my best to try and respond back to you guys. And for those that are good at this and people have questions, feel free to help others out in the community. We have a lot of members, and we have a lot of members that do help out, so that's definitely very much appreciated by everybody. Thank you very much. And right now I'm midnight on a Thursday night, so my goal was to get this out on Thursday. I'm technically past my deadline, but I did finish it by midnight on Thursday, so I'll be posting it up in momentarily, and you guys will be seeing this Friday morning. Have a good weekend, everybody.